Hello, Lizzie here. Now today I'm going to show you how to make this fabulous laptop bag. Actually you could use it for anything, but it does actually fit an iPad Pro. So if you've got something of that size and it's 9 inches by 13, it fits really snugly into my little case here, and I've actually got my pen in here as well, spare nibs, all sorts of other things as well. So that fits really neatly. So it's going to fit your devices as long as they're under 9 by 13. That'll fit snugly in there. Really good and easy to make, all straight stitching. Now if you look below in the description, you'll see all the measurements you need. While you're going down there, hit the subscribe, hit the bell and do a thumbs up, and then I'll know that you've been watching. The actual pattern itself is actually the first pattern that I made for my gold members, and the pattern is actually on my website, and you'll see that running along the bottom of the screen now. So all the dimensions are either here or they're in the description below, but it's a really super easy project. So the first thing you need to do is obviously cut all your pieces of fabric out. You need one piece for the outer. Let me just show you the fabric I'm using today. Isn't that awesome? I love it. I'll give you the details of what this fabric is. So this is the first piece that you need to cut. So this is the outer. You also need a wadding in there so your device is really nice and protected. You also need a lining piece as well, which is exactly the same size. I've actually joined mine in the middle because I didn't have a piece big enough. So that's that. And you also need your straps cut, and again go in the description below and it tells you the sizes of the straps that you need. Now the first thing you need to do is to prepare your strap. Now I've got a kind of mini version of this. You need two pieces 27 by 4, so I've got a mini version here just so you can see, because I've nearly made my strap up just to save a bit of time. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your two strap pieces which you've stabilised. Now in the US you need to think about a medium weight iron-on stabiliser to make your fabric a little stiffer. In the UK I use Vlieseline H250 for pretty much all my projects. So you're going to take your two straps and you're going to join them at both short ends. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to do, and if you look at mine, I folded mine, but you're going to end up with a loop. Okay, so if you join both short ends you'll end up with a loop, so right sides together. Okay, and you're going to stitch across those two short ends. Now the next thing you need to do is to fold this so you end up with a 1-inch strip, and I'm going to show you that on my little sample here. So we'll go to that side camera so you can see. So if I bring in my lovely mat and my iron, I'll take one of the pieces here just so we don't get confused. The first thing you're going to do, you're going to fold your fabric in half, and don't forget this is stabilised, so it's really nice and stiff, and you're just going to get yourself a crease line. Really, that's all you're doing. So that's nice and folded, you've got a lovely crease line there. And then you're going to bring those outside edges to that middle fold. So that's both sides. You can do one side and then you can do the other, but you're making a lovely, lovely sort of strong, stabilised strap. So if I do the whole length, so you're going to do this in the round. If you prefer, you can do each strip individually and then join them together, and all you're going to do now is fold in half again, and that is a 1-inch strap, and it's quite a well-known method of making straps. If you're not sure, just rewind, have another look to see how I did this. So there's your strap now fully ready for stitching, and you're going to stitch along here and along here, to neaten it but also to join all your edges together, and that's my next step. So I'm going to do that now. So we'll just switch the iron off, otherwise I'll burn myself. Pop that out of the way. So we've done the strap, so that's the main thing out of the way. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually stitch all the way around. Now I've already done this on one side just to save a bit of time, and I always increase my stitch length to about 3, perhaps even 3.25, just so you've got a longer stitch. It looks nicer and it's quicker to actually stitch. Now while I'm doing this on the machine, perhaps you have a quick look at this. You can find access to my Gold Club from my website. Sign up and you can connect to my Facebook Live events and join in all the fun my Gold Club members have on a weekly basis. And of course you get free patterns. See my Gold Club video on YouTube for more information. So I'm just nearly finished going all the way around. It's quite satisfying actually. You don't have to go as fast as me. You can go faster if you want. But I'm just coming up to where I started from. Now what I do is I never do a back stitch. I always start off straight, I don't go back. And when I come up to where I've started, I just go over the stitches, 2 or 3 stitches along, and then just cut my threads. It's purely decorative. And it doesn't look clumsy that you've got too many stitches in one place. So it's quite a nice technique where you don't backstitch, you just literally go over 2 or 3 stitches where you first started. So just trim my threads there. So now you've completed your loop, and this is both your straps for back and front, and it's really lovely and strong. It's going to really hold your devices really safely. So the next thing you need to do is to get your fabric. So you've seen below the instructions on what sizes you need to cut. So this is my outer fabric. I've got the wadding already glued to the back of the outer and my lining is over here. So now what you need to do, and again the instructions are below, or you can get the pattern from my website. You're going to measure 5 1/4 inches from the top. So this darker colour is the top of my bag. So if I show you my example, when I say the top of the bag, this part here, so this is where the dark piece will be. So from the top it's 5 1/4 inches from the top, and make a mark, but I've put a pin in mine, and it's 3 1/2 inches in, and then you go to 13 1/2 inches down here, again pop a pin in, and it's 3 1/2 inches from the edge. Repeat on the other side. Now I've drawn a white chalk line, difficult to see I know, but if I hold it up you might be able to see. I've done 2 white chalk lines going across there from pin to pin, so I know exactly where to put my straps. And when you actually fold the bag up, you'll see how that's going to look. So if we fold it up as if we've stitched it, and the top comes over here, the actual straps start from the pin, go underneath the bag and finish here. So where we joined our straps up, where our seams are, do you remember I said about joining the short ends? You will have 2 seams. So I've got one here where it's really dark, and I know you won't be able to see that, and I'm going to pop it straight into the middle of those pins and across the white line. So the white line goes down the centre of my strap, and I'm just going to pin that in place just to hold it. I'm then going to bring my strap across and make sure it's all going the same way. There we go. And again, find that join line, which is here, the seams where the 2 short ends join, and again pop it down the middle. So that's there, and again put it over the top of the white line, and again I'm just going to pin that in place like that. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is use the 2 pins on each end to secure my strap here and here, and that's where I'm going to stitch my strap in place. So this is what it should look like when you've popped it all together. So I'm just literally going to lift that pin and pop it back in again, and just make sure that your strap keeps over that white line. And again here, this is probably where long quilting pins would be really handy. Now if you're not sure and you think you've moved your pin, then just remeasure and make sure it's 5 1/4 inches from the top. And that way when you have made the bag and you bring the flap over, it sits very nicely, it's very secure. And again just make sure that white line is in the middle and give it a pin. So that's how it should look. So we're going to stitch rectangles there, around there, and the same here, starting from here going all the way around. It's a lovely strong stitch. You might want to shorten your stitch length because it needs to be strong. I'm going to keep mine on a longer length just so it's nice and easy and quick. Again, you might want to back stitch this because it needs to be a secure stitch. And you could try to go over your original stitching where you top stitched, or you could just stitch a little bit either side of it. If you can hear my dog, you can hear my dog. I think somebody has just walked past the house. She doesn't know about filming. Now you might want to do a back stitch again across that top, only because it makes it really secure. Nice strong stitch. She's a Tibetan Terrier, and she is a bit of a terrier. So you're coming back to where you started. Now I've obviously not cut my thread, so I know exactly where I started. And again, you might want to do a back stitch. So I'm going to go across, and then I'm going back on myself. And 2 rows is plenty, nice and strong. Don't be worried about top stitching. If you've never done it before, just go slow. You might want to pin it all the way along, you might want to even tack it, baste it. And we'll just do a double row there. In fact, it'll end up being 3, so I'm coming back. You're supposed to have less bulk under this part of the machine. Sometimes it doesn't always work out that way, but if you can, it just makes it easier. So I'm just coming up to my second pin there, a couple of stitches, I know. We'll do a double stitch again, sort of back stitch. Well, actually it's going to be 3. It's just security. And then coming back up the other side. I'm following pretty much my original top stitching, but you don't need to do that. You could even use a lovely embroidery thread that you may have on your machine. Little back stitch to finish. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Contrasting thread. I was actually sport for choice of what colour thread I should use for this project. So now all I'm going to do is cut my threads. I'm not going to worry about the inside because that's obviously going to be hidden, but of course you could. So there's my straps in place, not too bad. You can see how they look. So of course they are nice and loose now. So what I do is that I use my quilting clips, not pins. There's a reason why I'm saying that. If you use pins, we're going to turn this through at some point and you may well just catch yourself. But that keeps the straps out of the way. So the next thing we're going to do is join our lining to our main bag. And I've just put a clip there so I know I've got directional fabric. And if I work this out right in my head, when we open the bag up when it's finished, it should be right side round and the direction going the correct way. Like I said before, I joined my piece because I didn't have a piece long enough. And of course that seam is going to be well hidden. So again, I'm just going to do right sides together. And this is where you really do need to clip, or when I say clip, use your quilting clips. I'll just bring a few in. To join all your layers together. Use pins if you prefer. It's a real personal choice, isn't it, whether you use pins or whether you use the clips. So I would just clip that together at strategic places. So in other words, get your corners lined up. And a walking foot is absolutely brilliant at this point. If you've got a walking foot, don't be afraid of it. Some people use their walking foot on their machine all the time. It's not always appropriate because maybe you're putting in a zip and that would be a little tricky with a walking foot. but if you've got one, get it out, have a little play, but it will keep all your layers together beautifully. Really, honestly, it makes such a huge difference. So I'm happy with that. So now I've pinned, clipped at strategic places, the two corners, the middle. I can now just pop a few clips in just to hold that together. One more. And there we are. We're done with those. Okay, so now we need to leave a turning gap. Now I think leaving the turning gap in the side where you're going to end up stitching, I'll show you. So somewhere around here, so this is the top. If you remember, the dark fabric on mine is the top. So I'm going to leave a turning point about here, about 4 inches. It needs to be nice and big because we've got a lot going on here to pull through. So about 4 inches about there, either on the back or the front, it's entirely up to you. So if we have a little peek here, so my dark fabric is here, I'm going to leave my turning gap around about here, because when we turn through and stitch, it'll be caught up in the seams and it'll be fine. So I'll just take my clip out there. About 1/4 inch again, should be fine. Nice back stitch there because we're going to turn through. So I've just come round that final corner, done a little back stitch, and I've left a gap, don't know if you can see, of about 4 inches. So that gives us a nice big turning gap. The one thing I would say is to just trim your corners, get some of that bulk of the fabric away. In fact, you could trim all of this back if you wanted to, but the corners are especially important. There we are. So now you're just going to reach inside, always go for the furthest corner away, grab the other one while you're there, and just bring that through. Once you've got those furthest corners out of the way, the rest is super easy. Now at this point you need to give this a really good press and really good iron. I'll get that other corner out. A good pokey tool, so whatever you've got handy. Knitting needle is always good. You can use chopsticks. So many people have told me, but you can use chopsticks. Depends if you eat Chinese food, I suppose. But a nice blunt knitting needle, a nice big size, so a size, I think I use an 8 or a 10. So nice and big and chunky. So you're going to poke all these corners out. Give that a really good press. Now you will find, obviously you've got your turning gap there. So what you can do is get your iron and just take that 1/4 inch in and give it a good press. But what I like to do is to actually catch this in the seam as I'm stitching. So I'm just going to hold those together, give it a pinch, use the warmth of my hand just to crease that. And like I say, you need to give this a good press. So we're almost there. Let's take our clips out. So all of this needs a lovely press. So, in fact, I'm going to go away and do that now. So, I've taken it away, I've given it a really good press, it looks absolutely lovely, and actually I've used quilter's tape to seal my turning gap here, so you could do that if you want to, but we're going to top stitch over the top of it, so it matters not, but it does keep it in place. So this is what it should look like. So this is your lining underneath there, perfectly gorgeous. Just making sure it's going to be right. Whew, yeah. So now what you need to do is to make it into a bag. So what you're going to do is fold this up, bring that over like that. And your seams, do you remember your short seams on your straps should be really underneath. It should be on the bottom of the bag. So if we bring that up, bring our flap over, that should sit really nicely in there like that. But obviously we haven't sealed the edges. This is such the simplest thing ever. So again, get your quilter's clips or your pins, but now you've got quite a bit of bulk going on. So be aware of that. On your machine you might want to change to maybe a jeans needle or maybe a size 16. That would certainly help. I've got my regular 14 on there, and I'm sure my machine can cope. So I'm just looking for my little seams, which are just here, making sure they're okay, and I'm using those as my guide. And then literally I'm just going to use my clips just to clip these edges together. Now you could, if you wanted to, just stitch some of this. You don't have to stitch all the way down. So if I show you on this side, and also you could hand stitch these side pieces. You don't have to top stitch. I will for quickness, but you don't have to. So again, look, there we are. So I've used my quilter's clips just to hold those two sides in place. So back and front, they're clipped together. And I'm going to stitch from right out the corner there. I might leave 1/4 of an inch maybe, because this is quite bulky. I know my machine can manage. Your machine may not, depending on your machine. So be aware of that bulk there. And I'm just going to come all the way down. About 1/8 of an inch from the sides. We could try the iPad, couldn't we? Mm-hmm. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, plenty big enough. So even if we did a good 1/4 of an inch seam, that iPad is going to sit in there beautifully. And do you see how those straps tuck everything in, and the flap as well makes it really secure? In actual fact, I have a keyboard, and I put my keyboard here, put the flap over the top, and that holds my keyboard in place as well. So let's just finish this off. Doesn't matter really what side you start, what end, whether you start at the folded end or the top. Sometimes it moves, so probably best to start at the top and go down. I better do that, as I told you. I'm a bit of a rule breaker, I have to say, but I'll always tell you right. And there's always a reason why I do these things. So again, backstitch really well. I would actually come off your fabric. So I came off my dark green onto my lining fabric. Again, I've kept it on a long stitch, a 3. In fact, it might, yeah, just on a 3. Again, because it's kind of decorative as well. Don't forget you're going through all of those layers. So a walking foot, because sometimes it crinkles and you don't want it to crinkle. I haven't spent all this time making it. Actually, I'll be honest, it'll take you an hour to make this. It'll take you longer to cut the pieces out. So there's one side done. Beautiful. Now the other side, I want to do from this side, so I'm going to go from the fold up. Anything else I probably would have gone from the back side, so I'm going down onto the fold. Little back stitch there. If your machine doesn't want to move over that bulk, then use a bulky seam aid just to move it, or just move it manually once it gets gripped. It happens to all of us. It's nothing you've done wrong. I think this would make a lovely man bag, wouldn't it? The colours are super. And like I say, down below in the description you'll find what fabric I've used, dimensions I've used. Don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit the bell so you can see when I've done another video. And don't forget to like. So we'll trim our ends, but we'll be really good. You might want to be really good and stitch these ends in. I've never done that in my life. And just for those of you who have commented and laughed with me about how I throw all my bits and bobs onto the floor, I am the sweeper-upperer. I don't have a magic fairy that does that for me. So there we are. There's our case made. Isn't that glorious? And if we put our big iPad Pro, so you know the size of it, 9 by 13, there's plenty of room. In fact, I'd probably get my keyboard in there. So there we are, all ready to go. But it'd make a great school bag as well, wouldn't it? Right, so that's it. That's the laptop bag. Everything is down below that you need to know. I hope you make one. These have been super, super popular with my gold ladies. And I'll speak to you again another day. Bye bye now.